Friends, the Vegetarian. This novel is written by a young Korean woman by name of Han Kang. She is the recent Nobel Prize winner in literature, Han Kang, the vegetarian. So this novel is divided into three sections. The first section of this a vegetarian is narrated by a man named Mr. Cheong, who lives with his wife Yong Hai in Seoul, South Korea. The relationship is normal and unremarkable. Yong Hai is a woman of a few words, cooks and keeps the house, and read as her sole hobby. The only strange thing about her is that she sometimes does not like wearing a bra. And despite Mr. Cheong's insistence that she wear one, she tells him that bras make her uncomfortable. The blandness of their lives changes abruptly when one day Yong Hai wakes up in the middle of the night from a graphic dream in which she is violently killing and eating an animal, pushing raw meat into her mouth. Haunted by this dream, she throws away all the meat in the house. Mr. Cheong is aggravated by this behavior and becomes even more frustrated when she refuses to cook meat for him anymore. Mr. Cheong views this as a selfish and disobedient act and calls her insane. He is particularly confused because she had always been skillful at cooking meat. When, over the next few months, Yong Hai loses weight and starts refusing to have sex with her husband, explaining that his body smells of meat. She becomes unable to sleep. One evening, the couple has dinner with several of Mr. Cheong's co-workers, including his boss. Yong Hai does not wear a bra to the dinner, attracting the notice of his co-worker. She also refuses to eat the meat served at dinner and thus ends up not being able to enjoy most of the 12 courses served family style. The other comment critically on her vegetarianism and gradually stop talking to her at dinner. Mr. Cheong is appalled at his wife's behavior. Mr. Cheong decides to call Yong Hai's mother and her sister in the hopes that they can convince Yong Hai to give up her vegetarianism. They are equally shocked at Yong Hai's decision to disobey her husband, but are unable to convince her to eat meat again. Mr. Cheong also becomes frustrated with Yong Hai's abstination from sex, and he pins her down and rapes her on several occasions. Yong Hai also begins to take her clothes off when she's alone at home, cooking naked. When he asks why she does this, she only tells him that she is hot. Yong Hai continues to be haunted by nightmares wherein she is violent and murderous and continues to lose weight. Her family, including her mother, father, in Hai's husband, and her brother Yong Hu, gather together for a meet at In Hai's apartment. Young Hai's mother tries to get Yong Hai to eat meat, even holding pieces of pork up to her lips. When this fails, her father becomes outraged and tells Mr. Cheong and Young Ho to hold Yong Hai's arm. He then slaps her and jams a piece of pork into her mouth. Yong Hai immediately spits out the pork and desperation cuts her wrist open with a knife. Mr. Cheong and Yong Hai, brother-in-law, immediately takes her to the hospital. At the hospital, Yong Hai wound is stitched up But before she is discharged, she disappeared from her room. She is found on a bench having removed her hospital gown with a dead white bird with the bloody bite marks on it in her hand. The second section of this book is the Mongolian Mark is narrated from the perspective of Young Hai's brother-in-law and Hai's husband. 2 years after this first section, the brother-in-law is a video artist. His wife, the primary breadwinner in their home, is the manager of a cosmetic store. Brother-in-law and the Hai's marriage is strained, and he is more attracted to Young Hai. Recently, the brother-in-law has become obsessed with images of man and woman covered with painted flower having sex. This obsession began when In Hai, while giving a bath to their toddler, Jiwu mentioned that Yong Hai still has a Mongolian mark. The brother-in-law imagined the two of them having sex together and longs to film it. After being discharged from the hospital, Yong Hai lived with In Hai and the brother-in-law for the time due to the fact that Mr. Cheong left her, but she now lives alone. The brother-in-law visits Young Hai and asks her if she would model for him. He explains he wants to paint her body with flower and filmed her naked. She tactically agrees, and the brother-in-law becomes filled with lust. He is overcome by desire and has sex with In Hai for the first time in months. He puts his hand over her mouth and imagine she is Young Hai. When he is finished, she cries out. But he falls quickly into sleep and they do not address this incident afterward. Young Hai comes to the brother-in-law's studio where she calmly undresses. He paints huge flower on her body, films her in different poses. Afterward, they go out to dinner. He asks her why she doesn't eat meat, but she says that he wouldn't understand that evening. The brother-in-law returned to his film studio, forcing In Hai to come home early to watch Ji Woo. There he reviews the tapes and cuts them into a video, but he knows that he wants to film more. He asks a fellow artist friend Jay to model with Young Hai. He calls Young Hai to who has not washed off the paint and asks her to come back and model again. This time with another man, she agrees. The next day, Jay and Young Hai comes to the studio. The brother-in-law paints Jay in flower, and then he and Young Hai start to pose, with Young Hai doing things like craning her neck around Jay's, stroking him and straddling him without being asked. Jay becomes aroused and the brother-in-law asks if they would have sex for real. Jay immediately refuses and leaves shortly after. As Young Hai dresses, she confesses that she wants to have sex with Jay because of the flower on his body. Their brother-in-law then drives away, gets another artist friend to paint flower on him, and returns to the studio where the Young Hai is waiting. The brother-in-law immediately lays Young Hai down and aggressively has sex with her, forgetting his camcorder. When they are finished, Young Hai strokes the flower on his chest and returns the camera on and the film himself having sex with her from behind. Young Hai bursts into tears and switches off the camera. In their final minutes of sex, she yells at him to stop. Afterward, the two fall asleep in the studio together. When the brother-in-law wakes up, Young Hai is still asleep, but the camera is gone. When he goes to search for it, he finds In Hai at the studio. She tells him that she had come to look for him and watched the film and that she called emergency service on him. Just then, Young Hai wakes up and goes over to the veranda, showing her naked body to the sun. The brother-in-law thinks about throwing himself over the railing. The third section, Flaming Trees, is narrated by In Hai 2 years Later, Young Hai now lives in a psychiatric hospital and is refusing to eat entirely. A doctor tells In Hai that if she cannot get Young Hai to eat, they will try a method of getting her to eat that they have tried before, inserting a tube into her nose to feed her gruel. If this does not work, she will have to be transferred to a general hospital for a complicated surgery that will allow them to hook an IV up to her arteries to keep her alive. In I drift in and out of several memories from the last 2 years. She described an incident in which Young Hai had run away and had been found in the mountain acting like a tree. Afterward, Young Hai had told her that all of the trees were like brothers and sisters to her. She tells In Hai that she does not need to eat anymore. She only needs sunlight and water. On another visit, In Hai had asked Young Hai if she thinks she's become a tree, asking her how a tree could talk. Young Hai agrees with this logic, saying soon her thoughts and words would disappear. In Hai also thinks about her husband, how she had wanted to take care of him but has never fully sure that she loved him and was never sure that he loved her. She knew instead that he was in love with his work. She always thought he was incomprehensible to her. After she called the police on him and he had tried to throw himself over the railing but was rescued by a paramedic, he then had to prove that he was not mentally ill and had held in prison for several months. Afterward, he went into the hiding, and In Hai never saw him again, though he called once to inquire about Ji Wu. In Hai feels guilty about Young Hai's condition and wonders that she could have done to prevent it. But In Hai is also some ways jealous of Young Hai's ability to simply shuck off social constraint. She thinks that Jay, who is the only thing that is keeping her tethered to reality. Even when she was still with her husband, she thought often of ways to harm herself or kill herself, and once walked into the mountains intending to completely abandon her family, but decided to return. In the present, In Hai is unable to convince Young Hai to eat. Young Hai is then taken to another ward and the doctor tries to insert the tube into her nose. Young Hai grows upset, saying that she doesn't want to eat and tries to resist their efforts. In Hai watches as they successfully insert the tube, but when they pull out a tranquilizer so that Young Hai can't throw up the food, In Hai runs into the room and bites a caregiver in the ward who tries to hold her back. Young Hai struggles, then throws up blood and has to be transferred to the general hospital immediately. Before they leave, In Hai thinks it's your body, you can treat it however you please. In the ambulance on the way to the general hospital, In Hai confesses to Young Hai that she has dreamed too, but that at the same point a person has to wake up. As they drive, In Hai sees a forest of tree glinting in the sunlight. She looks at him as if waiting for an answer, as if protesting against something. So this is the story of The Vegetarian by Han Kang, a marvelous novel. So Han Kang, he was born. She was born in South Korea before moving to Suwari at 10 years old. She studied Korean literature at Yonsei University. So this novel is The Vegetarian, written in 2003 and 2007, written where in South Korea and published in 2007, South Korea. And genre of this novel is literary fiction. Setting, time, place is Seoul, South Korea. Climax of this novel is Young Hai refuses to allow the doctor to force feed her An eye witnesses their attempts to insert a tube into her nose and bites the nurse in order to get the doctor to stop. Antagonist of this novel is Mr. Cheong. The point, so this is the story of Yong Hai. The name of this novel is The Vegetarian, written by Nobel Prize winner Han Kang. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you very much.